Hey, everybody. It has been a week since I have been here for this month of April, where I have been interviewing widows in this conversation series, Widows Unveiled. And part of that was planned because, as many of you may know, the seventh anniversary of my husband's passing was last Friday, April 16th. And so I needed to decompress and just kind of make sure I was doing okay and that my mental state was good. And then part of that was just circumstance, right? We had some other folks that were scheduled this week, but we have to push them back to next week. But as always, I'm excited for whenever someone shows up and is willing to tell their story. So we do have another widow that is in the midst of us this evening who we are going to talk to. And as always, I'm just so grateful to every woman that has said yes and been willing to share their story because as her and I were just talking, I was just like, people are always among us and have no idea our stories and don't know that we're widows or don't know what's going on. And so I'm just always excited to be able to be in conversation and have someone join us. So our tonight's guest, y'all ready for the unveiling? Because I don't think we've even done any marketing. It's been been a crazy week with everything that's going on in the world as well. So without further ado, I am going to bring, hey, Dina.
Hey, Elle, how are you?
I'm wonderful. How are you doing on this? It was a lovely spring day in Chicago today.
It was, but I spent a lot of it inside. So it was like
Oh,
I went out this morning to walk the dog, and then by the time I went out again, I was like, wait a minute, this is nice. I should have been
right.
here. So
Yes. Look,
yeah,
I was driving around running errands. I took a selfie. It was like, hey, the sun is shining. Let's go. I'm ready
right.
for spring.
And in Chicago Spring, you better capture that minute. I
Absolutely,
won't
because
even
we
say that
know.
day or that moment, that millisecond. Capture it because it could change on you. Because that's
Look, don't do us like that. Don't do us. But you're so right. You are so right.
yeah.
So I always like to give a little bit of background. And here's the funny thing: we don't know each other very well, right? We have
Mhm.
been in some of the same circles. We've been in some of the same space.
Mhm.
And through a mutual connection, I learned that you were a widow. And I wrote your name down to interview for this month, but I had to send you a message and confirm, like, I know this is a little strange and I'm
Right.
sorry for asking you this, but are you a widow?
Right. I told you I should have been like, no, what are you talking about?
Do you know how bad I would have felt? I would have
I
been
would
like,
have made
oh,
you feel real bad. My husband, what? No,
don't do that to me, girl. Don't do
no,
that
I
to me.
won't. But unfortunately, I am a part of this crazy little club, band, sorority, sisterhood that I don't think any of us, when we're taking that walk down the aisle, say, "Oh, I'm going to be a widow someday, some young day, not some old day, some young day."
That's it right there. Some
Yeah,
young day,
some young
right?
day. Yes.
Ooh, okay, before we get into the story and how you became a widow, let's learn a little bit more about you. Who is Dina?
So Dina is a fabulous 50-year-old woman. I just celebrated my 50th in 2020. So, everyone was
Hey.
like, girl, you 50. You shouldn't be. Wait a minute. I'm 50, so I most should be. So that's one of my celebrated titles. I'm a mother of two wonderful young adults. That I'm more than grateful for. When they tell you that God gives you exactly what you need, like He already knew what was happening. So He gave me some humans that I could really do this walk with. So I'm proud for that. I am a lifelong educator. So I have been in education almost 30 years as a
Wonderful.
teacher, principal, and then my most recent title was a chief academic officer. And and then now I'm just free and fancy free. So that's a whole nother story. But
Oh yeah, we got to talk about
we got
that.
to talk. So I lost lost my position due to restructuring after 5 years of being in the role. But it's probably one of the best things that could have happened to me and for
In
me.
disguise.
And so I am more excited about the next phase of my life than I have been in a long time. So, yeah, and I am daughter, sister girl, sister friend, and Chicago born. Well, not Chicago born, but Chicago raised. And yeah, so that's me.
And I think you sing too.
I do sing, but I'm not the singer in the family. So, but I do.
But you sing because you did some caroling around the
Oh, yes,
holidays.
yes, we did. I started a group called Black Girls Carol, and we spent some of the coldest days of December caroling throughout the neighborhoods in Chicago, bringing a little joy. So I was thinking that maybe we should do like Christmas in July and do some caroling there. And I don't know. I thought that would be
Ooh,
a fun little
that would be kind of cool.
twist up.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I am just right now like living life completely out loud.
Mhm.
I'm a 2-time stroke survivor. So I had to learn how to
Mhm.
walk, talk, write, and do all that thing. So that was
Wow.
2002, 2004. And then in 2012, yeah, I just became this crazy thing called a widow. And so I had been married 14 years when it happened. And so, yeah, that just added some more glory to my story. And yeah, so when the thing happened, like with the job, I was like, do y'all realize that this is definitely not the worst thing that has ever happened to me?
Absolutely.
And so it that moment in time kind of frames your entire existence, like for real, because it's like if you can champion your way through that moment in time and that significant loss, then you know the world is just really waiting for you. So I did that journey kind of out loud, a little uncomfortably,
Hmm.
so for a lot of my family and close friends. But you know, my test is not just going to be my test. It's for
Yes.
all of us.
Yes.
I just got to be the one that passed it, but it's for all of us. The grade we share the grade. It's like a group project. You got the one or two people that do the work, and
Right.
the rest of us share the grade. So
Right.
that's kind of how I've lived a lot of my life.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I love it. Well, thank you for sharing that. Even with your recent, with the layoff, and I can relate. I've only worked for 3 organizations and been laid off from each one of them. So I
Oh,
completely
yes.
understand.
We about to put that MSW to work because I need a sister right about now.
Hey,
I was
listen.
telling somebody like in 30 years, like no lapse of service, like no lapse. So I'm excited. Like I'm filling out like to get unemployment. Like what else can I get? Like what other benefits are
Listen.
there?
Get every benefit owed to you. Let me
Look.
say that.
And I could not get his social security when he passed away because I made too much money. I'm gonna be like, I'm back. I don't know.
Well, they still gonna tell you you're gonna have to wait.
Oh god.
Because you have young adult children, right? And you're not retirement age.
Oh,
Unfortunately, they still gonna
oh
be like, girl, you gotta wait.
shoot, girl. I was going for my benefit. So
Look, still go after it, but they may tell you, well, you got a few more years, baby.
yeah, yes, baby, you'll be all right. So yes, it's been an interesting life. It's so funny that when I first came home from college and I was 21, and my pastor had me give like this testimony, and I was like, "Oh, God is so good," and this and that, and I was out late, and He saved the parking space for me. And one of the ladies at the church was like, "Child, you ain't got no testimony," and I was like, "But guess what?
I do.
I got a testimony because it's so."
So, why don't you tell us a little bit about your testimony? And so, you said in 2012 is when you lost your husband.
Mhm.
And, I welcome you to tell as much or as little, but just, walk us through at least how you were feeling at the time and, how that transpired and how old your kids were and how old you were. Those are very important factors.
Okay, so I was 42, going to be 42. I was turning 42 that year. And my son was 11 and my daughter was turning 13. And so it was June 12th, 2012. And no, I'm sorry. His birthday is June 12th. We had his funeral on June 12th. It was June 6th, 2012. And my husband actually took his life. And so in our home, and so found him in the house. But it was really strange because he was like, I thought he was asleep. And I legit walked around him for about 45 minutes. And then I found a note like in another room. And I look at the note and it just, and he titled it, which this might end up being my book title. He put at the top, so this is how it ends, because that was a comment that I had made to him
Oh my goodness.
in some recent times. So, and then he just said sorry, he loved us, and all this kind of stuff. So, no real explanation as to, why he made that choice. But he was a veteran. He was a sniper in the military. Did like 3 different tours. So when I met him at 24, he was fresh out of the military and going into college, and I was already out of college. And so we got married like 4 years later. And I remember like our first year of marriage, like him sleeping with the pillow between his legs and like the Army issued like sleeping bag over his head. And so he did that for about 8 months. So clearly he was battling that. And then, but years later, it was battling the unresolved dealings of that, plus just life. And so I can't pinpoint it to one thing or the other. But he just shows a different route. And the fact that he was such a marksman and he took his life with a gun and there was no evidence of him being shot anywhere, allowed that even in his craziest moments, he was considerate of, me finding him. And so, yeah, and it was my husband, huge presence in the world. Throughout the city of Chicago. 2 days earlier of him taking his life, he actually spoke at this fatherhood conference with over 500 men, like motivating them. I try to explain to people that like nearly 2,500 people came through his funeral. Like I have pictures of just lines wrapped around the block for people trying to come in to view his body. So, I mean, he was a incredible loss to us, but also just a loss to the world. And so, yeah, I mean, so losing a husband by any means is crazy. But having to deal with the uncomprehendable part of suicide just made it more crazy for me.
Absolutely.
And so
Absolutely.
really spent years like trying to well, first I spent months like, God, why?
Absolutely.
Because
That's yeah.
God is faithful and sovereign, and he hears our cries. He started to answer some of the whys, and then I was like, okay, God, that's enough. He was dealing with a lot
Oh,
of
you
stuff.
got some of your
I got
answers.
some of my answers. He was dealing with a lot of stuff that even me as his wife did not know that he was carrying. And then, after that, then just spent years just trying to like pull life back together with some level of normalcy. And so he took his life in June. I was a principal at that time. In July of that same year, my assistant principal that I had been assistant principaling with or working with for my entire career as a principal got her own school. And she was like, D, if you don't want me to leave, I just won't leave. Girl, like life goes on. That's the thing.
Yeah.
Like life goes on. And clearly if you was looking for a principalship, you ready to go. So it's time to launch. But that just forced me into like really coming back into the school, like with a lot of unresolved grief and just trying to lead the best way that I could. And hired a rock star who worked with me, and I told him like, look, just do the do.
Yeah.
And probably what I felt was one of my worst years as a leader was probably one of my best years as a leader, because it was in that year and that time that I learned the value of my team, learned the value of building people to really support you, learned how to like ask, how to have people, like nurture and care for you when you're usually the nurturer and the carer. And so it just strengthened me as a human in that particular year. And so it was also in that year that my daughter ended up graduating 8th grade. She was at Lindblom, and she went into high school at Lindblom. So it's like these kind of monumental things happening as well.
At
So
the same time, yeah. So you're constantly balancing that, right? Because it's like you're sad, but you're happy.
mhm,
You go through this range of emotions because of life.
because of life. And we stayed in the house. I had some work done and some things changed and tried to make it. So I stayed in the house through that first winter, and it was like shoveling, doing things that I'd never done, like getting up
Girl,
in the morning
yes.
at 5 a.m. to shovel some snow. Like, what is this life?
Yes.
And just remembering the breakdowns around just doing the things that he did that I probably didn't even really appreciate because I was so caught up
Hmm.
in everything that I was doing, that I was like, man. So, but it also just coming in and out of the house, like, made it more difficult to heal. So eventually we moved. We moved like that next spring,
Okay.
because what would happen was like we would leave for the day, have pretty good days outside the house, but then you come
But
back
then you're
into the
coming back
house
in.
and it's like you're putting that whole kind of cloak.
You have every memory,
Yeah,
right? Like every memory is right there. And how do you really deal with that,
right.
right? Okay.
And not
Which
just bad memories, like
Oh,
good
for
memories,
sure. The
great
good
memories.
memories
So
too. Yeah, absolutely. So that leads me to ask, like, how have you been able to manage your grief? So you talked about work and you talked about the change in leadership there. You talked about your home. You talked about, the kids and graduating and their milestones. How have you been able to manage your grief in the beginning as well as even when you think about it now?
yeah, so my whole mantra, and I tell people this, with grief, and what I've learned is like grief is not just connected to the death of a person. Like we grieve so many things, but
Absolutely.
one of the things around grief is like feel the feels. So one of the things that I just allow myself to do, and I'm always encouraging like my
Yes.
friends to do, is like feel the feels. Whatever it is that you feel at that moment, feel it. You feel like laughing, you laugh. If you feel like breaking down and crying, you cry. If you're mad and you want to throw some stuff, throw some stuff. And so that's really what I did, is I just allowed myself to really be present in whatever like feeling that I felt.
Yeah.
And I didn't put any kind of like restrictions or even like condemnation around how I felt. And so that helped me navigate early on, but it helps me navigate now because like there's moments. I was at a dismissal hearing for a teacher, and so I was talking, and then all of a sudden the attorney looked over and she's like, "Why are you crying? What's happening? Can we have a break?" Like it was, like sitting around the table, and it was his birthday. It was June 12th. And
Mm.
it was just like I had not realized, because I was going, going, going. I was doing, 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 that it was his birthday, and that was probably a couple years out. And then I just had to have that moment. But as long as I allow myself to have that moment, then you just kind of move into the next moment. So
Absolutely.
that's probably my number one thing, is just feel the feels, whatever they are at that moment, feel them. And then secondly, it's like I'm open about my story. So I remember, after it happened, people were like, "Well, what do you want us to tell people?" What?
Tell them the truth.
What do you mean? Like, I can't think about that. What happened? Like, well, should we say he? No, because one lie begets another lie begets another. I
Absolutely.
don't have the mental space for none of this. So I definitely cannot be trying to figure out what I'm supposed to tell who. And so I have just been very like transparent with this journey, like on social media, very early into it. When I got up and started moving around, it's like I started posting about how I was feeling. And it wasn't just because I want people to be like, oh, we love you. No, that's not
Yes.
what I want. Like, I just want people to know this is how we are in this moment. This is what happens when people make messed up decisions like this. This is just, this is my life where it is. So if you're uncomfortable, click off, block me, unfriend me, whatever you're going to do. So that was one of the other pieces that I did. My dog, I'm trying to have her leave out. Did you hear her growling? It's dinner.
Yeah.
And she's like, you sitting there looking at that screen like
Right.
you don't need to
What's
feed
going
me.
on? Right. Like, what's going on?
So, but just being open and really having conversations about it, that has kind of really helped me navigate it, and like even this moment, taking the opportunity when I could tell my story, I'm going to tell my story, because then it also just, it's more empowering.
Yes.
And it's
It empowers you, it empowers others.
yes.
I always say, and so we're very similar in that. Even when you said feel the feels,
Mm-hmm.
like I did some videos in December about 31 days of resilience.
Mm-hmm.
And that is one of the things I talk about all the time. Like, y'all just, if you want to cry, laugh, scream, whatever it is, just let it out.
Yes.
Just let it out. So it's like I hear you talking about that, and I immediately became very vocal around my story when Paul passed. And that was not my intention, actually. It
Yeah.
was like I wasn't even really on social media like that. I would post occasionally, but it was just something about it. And then people started reaching out to me because I was sharing my story when it would happen to other people.
Mm-hmm.
So I was able to connect to other young widows,
Yeah.
because I was 36 and I met some other young widows who were pregnant when their husbands passed, all kinds of things. So it's so important for us to share our stories. And I'm so glad that you like, no, I'm going to be honest about
Mm-hmm.
how he died. Like, I'm not going to make up some story, like you said, that you got to remember and figure out who you done told what to. Like,
And because of the man that he was, like, he didn't want to go out. Like, he wouldn't want to be a coward. Like, he wouldn't want to hide. I mean, in some kind of warpness of him, like, whatever his choice was doing that, like, he made it, like, fully. He made the choice. And so just even honoring him. But, I mean, it's been a difficult journey for the kids.
mm-hmm.
So, like my daughter, she very much became our caretaker. And so she, like I tell people, which is why I celebrate so hard for her, is like, there's moments in her life, our life, my son's life that I do not even remember. Like, I was in zombie mode for a good few years after this happened. Like, and like, especially when we were in the house, like, I'm going in, picking up that cloak of grief. I'm out of there. I don't even know what they ate, how they ate. I probably stopped and got something. So, like, she really took care of us. But it was so interesting that when she got ready to go to college, like, I forced her to really get some good therapy, because what I didn't want her to do was to like be away and not have the coping skills needed in order to deal with this. And I did not realize how unaddressed her trauma was, or her grief was, until that senior year, when she wanted her daddy at things. And so it would be mornings we driving to school and she's like, I want my daddy to be my, So there were, monumental things happening in her life that she wanted him to be at. But
Absolutely.
because she had always been like, the warped and strong one, or this, like, I just let her get away with not sticking with counseling. Whereas my son, they were so close and intertwined that, like, he had a counselor that came to the house for over a year.
Wow.
And they really dealt with him. So it's just like figuring out how to really be there and support your kids. And I mean, probably the greatest support I could have been for them was just being more present than ever.
Yeah.
Like, as a aspiring educator, going up through the ranks, want to be this, like missing stuff all the time, like that wasn't an option anymore.
Yeah. You
Um,
had to be there because one parent was gone, so you had to make sure that you were showing up.
yeah. So, which is,
So how do you keep your husband's legacy alive if you do? Like I'm hearing you talk about your son and your daughter and the relationship that they had and even how your daughter was just like, now I'm missing my daddy, really, right?
yeah.
At these important moments.
Mhm.
Um, how do you keep his legacy alive or do you keep his legacy alive?
Well, because of who he was, like I'm always trying to imagine how to like keep him alive. When we were closer to the loss, like we did more like balloon releases on Father's Day. We actually had moments of it was more like thought out, like um real kind of focused activities in order to like
Mhm.
kind of celebrate them or to memorialize or what am I trying to say? Just to like keep his
Yeah,
memory alive.
keep his memory alive. Mhm.
Yeah. And so, but then what I found out from like doing things like that was like it was not how the kids wanted to like heal. Like that triggered
Ah,
more things in them. So we did those a little less. But now I when posts come up, um, I'll just like reshare them. I'll just try to put it out when something happens. Like I'll find notes or I'll find this or something will trigger like a memory. And when that happens, I'll try to like post it or share it. I do try to really keep in touch with like his friends and making sure that they're still like an integral part of the lives of our kids. Yeah, I don't do as great. I mean, a job as I had done in the past, but I won't even say should do. I was trying not to use that.
I was about to say it's a little different now too,
Yeah,
though.
but it's just, I try to just honor those. And then like when big things happen for the kids, like still connecting him and reminding, the world that they have like all the good things that was in him, they have that.
Yeah.
So my son every day more and more like him and not just like physically, I'm glad I was attracted to my husband because my son is him. But like his behaviors, like some of the stuff that how he annoys me and how he bothers his sister, and like I catch myself saying things that I heard his mother saying. Like you mad, different things like when I'm fussing at him and I'm like, oh my gosh, he is just the same kind of humor, everything. And so just even calling out those moments. And then as my son has become, so he's 20 now.
Okay.
So, as he's entered into like manhood or adulthood, that we have more conversations about his dad, the man. And so just sharing different things with him. So yeah, uh that yeah, I'm trying to like, but that's it. That's what we do. I mean,
That's
you know,
fine. You
he's forever a part of me. Like, and even though like as I move and I remember at one of the apartments I lived in, I had like a lot of pictures of him and the kids up, and him and like his dad who passed away like a year after him would have those up. And so a friend of mine, her husband, was DJing this little get together I had, and he was in the basement. And he went home. He told me, he's like, "Man, it's so strange. It's like she has a museum to him, and this and that." And I'm like, "What?" Like legit, like no, I have pictures of him and the kids, but I mean,
like
even
stuff
that,
you're supposed to have up. I mean, but for
right?
some people
But,
that's uncomfortable.
and I guess because he was sitting right by the one place where all the pictures were. So, but it's less of that now. So, like I bought
Mm,
a, this is I bought a building last year, which I haven't owned property since we owned our property together.
okay.
And so this was like a huge thing because I had never gone through that. Like, I was always the second signature on whatever we were purchasing at that time. But so it's less of him, but I still think it's important that I have pictures of things. And then there are like some bins of things that I've just kept. Like I don't know if the kids will want to see that when they grow up. So I try
When
to
they
keep
get older, yeah.
that photo albums, different things from the military, so that when they get older, like that they have memories. And my daughter's like, I'm not gonna want to see that. I was like, oh God.
You don't, well, that's the thing. She says that now, but you never know.
You never know. And then my son, which is strange, so like he has, so in the building there's a garden unit that I've allowed him to occupy. Don't ask me why. Mostly because I don't want him up in my space anymore. But I went downstairs and like he had some of his dad's helmets and things that he had taken out of the containers that were in the garage, and they're in his little apartment. So I was like, wow. So we didn't talk about it. He didn't ask, but it just some pick, you know what I mean? So if it's there are pieces that they want, then I've tried to keep those things intact for them as well.
Yeah, I love that. That is, it's as difficult as it is, it's also beautiful, right? So I absolutely love that. So thinking about that, let's think about some other widows, and I'm sure you've had some other conversations.
Mhm.
What do you think is the biggest misconception about being a widow?
The biggest misconception. Well, I think for a lot of people, what they're learning more is that it's something that happens to old women. Um, that's a crazy misconception. And then
That was my misconception before I became a widow.
right, it's like it's all us old ladies. We got time before I have to worry about that.
Hmm.
And then I think another thing maybe just that your life can't be plentiful afterwards.
Yes.
And yeah, I mean, I think we'd be on a whole different course if he was still here. Just even I think about my son, who my husband was really, even though I was the educator, he was the disciplinarian around school.
Hmm.
And there came a point that my son is really my most naturally genius child. My daughter just works really hard, so she's really smart. But it's some years that I was like, but allowing him to be able to have the kind of freedom, because I couldn't manage him the way that my husband would have probably disciplined, is allow him to become the personality that he's become.
Hmm.
And so I just think that, there is a strong, fruitful life afterwards. Like if you take care of yourself, you do the work with healing, um, what your ladder can be real great. And you can still love again. Like I haven't found him yet, because one thing is like my husband of my 20s and 30s and early 40s was a good husband. So it's like now that I'm here, it's like you better come with some game.
Look, that's one of the questions. What happens next in your love story, right? Like, I'm like, the people want to know, and by the
Yeah,
people I
well,
mean me. Like, what happens next?
I tell God all the time, my heart remains open.
Yes.
And so, Lord, but I only want what's for me. Like, and I don't want no struggle bus of a relationship. Been there, done that. Like, dang it. I don't want to be, I don't. I want to meet somebody and we have a great time. And that's it. That's all. Like, we both bring our little cars to the table and we make those cars do what they do. And yeah, but definitely open to love again, desiring love again. I mean, because the thing about like, and I tell people all the time, like, I'm a wife. I'm a wife.
Girl, we are kindred spirits.
I'm
You
a
and
wife.
I are because that's how I feel. I was like, I'm not meant to be not married. Like,
Yeah, I'm not meant to be somebody's boo thing, somebody's side chick, somebody's whatever, friends with
listen.
benefit. Although, no, I'm just kidding. Um, but like, I've had to check that as I've learned how to date, because I am a wife. Like, I often become wifely to people who are not my husband, and so
That's a word,
I've had to
girl.
learn how to be like, yeah, I get that this is who you are innately and what you want, but like those duties, those responsibilities, those things are meant for someone who put a ring on it.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so I would love to get married again. I'm hopeful to get married again, but I just ain't marrying anything.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I agree with you there wholeheartedly. Well, let's take us to one more question. And that is, what words of wisdom do you have for a recent widow? So we have a widow that's watching, let's say anywhere from, it's super fresh to the first 3 years. What do you say to that woman?
It sucks. I'm sorry that you have to feel this feeling that I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy, but you're gonna get through it and you're gonna champion it and you're gonna wear this title as tightly as you wore the one of somebody's wife. So just weather it, ask for what you need, feel the feels, but know that there is another side. And not that the other side doesn't mean like I just forget about him and that no, I'm gonna forever be his wife and I'm gonna forever be his widow. But there is another side that it feels a little bit easier and a little bit better. And then get you a person. So I went to so I've gone to Camp Widow twice. I don't know if you've ever heard of Camp Widow.
I've heard of it. I haven't been. You've gone twice, huh?
So the
Okay.
first time I went was 2015. And it was just like you get you a tribe. Like it's a lot of us out here in the midst to like understand what understand. So like I reach out all the time when I hear somebody's husband died, like if you ever want to talk, if you need something, you need an ear. But like I think learning as a young widow, as someone who did not plan their lives this way, to like ask for what you need and hold people accountable. Because you know what? At the funeral, people make a lot of promises. I got you,
Girl.
girl, I'm gonna be there. But the reality is life goes on. But guess what? There are very few people who made those promises that if I rang their phone right now saying that I needed something, that they wouldn't show up. And I think especially for black women, like and that's the only point that I could speak to. It's like we're so used to being super strong, super everything, superwoman there. Like take that cape off, girl. Like this is your
Hmm.
time. Yeah. Like widowhood is like complete kryptonite.
Yep.
Let it dissolve you, let it
Yep.
willow you, and then let people rebuild you and love on you and just remind you that you are great and you're gonna be okay.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. That's so awesome and it's so true. I have one of my good friends from high school, her and her husband through October of last year, because that's when things start getting a little crazy in Chicago, but dinner every Tuesday.
Hmm.
Every Tuesday for my daughter and I.
Hmm.
We were at their house from 2014 through the end of 2020.
Wow.
And if we, people have meetings, we got stuff going on, we switch it to Wednesday or Thursday.
Hmm.
But unless we were out of town, every week they're like, "Nah, y'all family. We do dinner. Like we
Right.
do this."
And
And
people want to show up for you like that.
yeah, and it's I always tell people I have some of the best, like my tribe, my support system has been bar none one of the best just in the world is the way I feel. And they continue to show up for me, right? Like they still just show up and checking on me and making sure Mona and I are good. My daughter was 2
Yeah.
when my husband passed.
Hmm.
So she's 9 now and I'm like, y'all come get her.
Right. Don't be trying to go. We still need you. And that's it. That's it. I think that's the biggest thing. Like, be in that moment, be loved on. But, eventually you got to get up. Like, someone connected me to a lady whose husband also took his life.
Hmm.
And it was like really, maybe Cal had been dead like 2 weeks or so.
Oh
And
wow.
somebody mentioned it at church and ended up getting connected at church. And she's like, I hope you don't mind. But she
Wow.
has been like my rock for me, just helping me understand that piece of death
Yeah.
and just kind of being present. But she would always say like she stayed in bed for like months.
Hmm.
And she's like, and you up already? You moving? Because I still tried to keep it moving, tried to
Yeah.
keep on life. I gave myself those moments, but I had to keep it trudging and realizing that, I mean, whatever your spiritual higher power is, that 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 things are working together for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
Can you make sure we see your shirt? I want everybody to see what your shirt says.
yeah, it
Death
says death
sucks.
sucks. Girl, I'm twisting death
Yeah,
sucks.
right. It's a little twisted, but we got it.
And that's really my comment, like, to people when they tell me about death and tell me about this thing, and I'm like, it sucks. Like,
Mhm.
it sucks.
Because we're so connected to people, right? Like, and that's intentional. We're meant to be connected to
Yeah.
people. So when, especially, I tell people, my father passed a few years ago. I've lost a lot of people in my
Hmm.
life.
Me too.
But I tell people, losing your spouse, the person that you made a choice, because here's the thing, you make a choice to spend the rest of your life, the rest of your days. And when you think the rest of your days is like 50 years,
Hmm.
and it turns out for me, it was only three,
Wow.
and it's like 3, 10, 15, like whatever the amount of
Yeah.
years, you're just like, no, 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 no. We
Mm,
were supposed to have about 35 or 40 more.
yeah. And that's one of the things they explained at Camp Willow. That's why I was telling you about that. Was that, it compares to no other death because as an adult, your spouse becomes your person.
Yes.
So, and no shade to people who've lost mamas, kids, none of that. Like, it's all hard. It's all hard. It's all hard. But like, the person you call, like, I remember one of my greatest meltdowns was when my car stopped working on Lakeshore Drive.
Girl,
You would have thought that
Dina.
somebody was doing all, and the people like pulled over and they like, what? And I'm just this bubbling
Dina.
mass of mess because of this car. I ended up trading. It probably didn't even need to be traded in, but I was like, yeah, I can't never have this happen to me again. But it's like, even when we were dating, like, if I got a flat tire or something happened with my car, I was calling him. Like, this is your person who is
Helps you through everything.
everything. This is your person. And I mean, sisters, friends, mothers, but once you become an adult, like, that person who is like almost responsible for you is
Look,
gone.
your emergency contact. When
Yeah.
you got to change your emergency contact, girl.
It changed my emergency contact. Yes, I had to do that. My ICE that you put in your cell phone.
Listen, I'm like, okay, my mama can't be my ICE no more. It's time.
It's time. So guess who's mine now? My daughter.
Your daughter.
She's 21. I said, you do know your mom emergency contact now. She's like, well, you're mine, mommy. I'm like, yeah, okay. But yeah, it's like that I think that helped me realize like why this for a wife is so tragic. Is because you
Mhm.
lose your person.
You do. You lose your girl. I had a meltdown recently. My daughter and I came in and she has wallpaper. We put wallpaper in her room. Girl, this wallpaper was coming off the wall. I literally lost it.
Yeah.
I was like, because guess what? If Paul was here, he could deal with it.
Right. Right. Then it wouldn't even be on your plate to even think about. That's another good thing though. Like, I got me some good handymen um that I could call. Like, I
I
have a
mean, you might have to share those. I might have to text you and be like, girl, send me the
yes,
handyman.
I'm serious. Like, I just stuff that stress me out. Like, I trade my cars in. Like, I cannot be stressed out
Yeah,
because
I'll trade my cards in. Yeah.
I can't. Like, so I mean, the things that I can control
Yeah.
happening, I try to control that as much as I can control that. But like, or get people for it.
Yeah, I love that. Well, we went past our time, but I
Ah,
thank you. It's been great. It has been absolutely wonderful just learning more about your story. And I thank you so much for sharing. I truly appreciate you and for being vulnerable and honest and authentic because
yay.
that is the best part. So that when women see this no matter what time it is. I had some widows texting me talking about, girl, I was watching this at 2 a.m. I'm like, I'm asleep at 2 a.m.
Right.
I kudos to y'all that be up, but
You remember them widow days when you weren't asleep at 2 a.m.
well, that too. But you know what? That's one thing I will say, because I think just the way I'm wired, I only lost sleep the first week.
Oh, girl, please.
Only the first week. After that, God allowed me to sleep. I didn't lose sleep very much. That first week though, I don't know that I slept at all the first
Yeah.
week,
Yeah.
actually. But
I was
but
sleep, wake up, and yeah. But yes, better
I'm like,
days,
we'll, we'll
better
we'll
days.
we'll come back for part two, or
Yes, we
we
will.
may do a round table, because there's so many, like there's just so many things. Like I just wanted to bring light to more widows, but there, every time I hear a story, I'm just like, oh my God, I have like 50 other questions,
Yeah.
right? And we'll be on here all night. We talking about 2 a.m. We'll be on here till 2
Right,
a.m.
right. Be like,
talking.
y'all still talking? Just
But
call me, girl.
Dina,
Just call me. We can finish.
I know we can finish, right? We can have an after party.
Yes.
But thank you so much. I truly appreciate you. And thank you to everyone that has been listening and chiming in. We will be back next week with two more widow conversations to close out the month. And as I told you all, I just want to really bring light to the widows that are in this world, and so that you all can find out a little bit more about these stories. So until next time, this is Elle Davis, and I will see you later. Bye.
Bye.